Observaciones de mi vida, victoria. Mi vida ya está escrita. Victoria. Pero sigo el mismo, nunca cambio, aunque tenga muchos títulos. Ahora muchos me dicen Sabor Latino. Te felicito, mi hermano, eres famoso. Gracias por todo el apoyo, es la respuesta. El mensaje: nunca te rindas en la vida. Y nunca me olvido de esa celda que hasta hoy tengo. Muchas pesadillas, 360, la vida da vuelta. Ahora inspiro familias en una escuela. 7 publicaciones, sueños cumplidos. Que represento, hip-hop positivo. Los dolores ahora son canciones. Más bendiciones, más observaciones y más versos. Ahora más escupo bendiciones. Ahora me despido. Victoria, porque me monta.
Welcome everyone again. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope everyone enjoyed the last episode, or I should say the first episode of A Learning Moment with Sabor Latino. Oh man, I know I keep saying this, but I'm just so excited about having this opportunity to finally have my own podcast and be able to share with you guys so many learning moments out of my life. And it's just been a pleasure. Just real quick, I remember putting all these ideas together and saying to myself, how are we going to make this happen? You know, always been known to be or do strategic planning. And I said to myself, if I'm going to do this to add another extension to my life and another extension of my presentations to the world, I want to make sure that it's done the right way. So it took me some time, but, you know, blessings from God, I was able to do it. I was able to put down that plan together and really focus on what are the things that really interest me and what are the things that I really want to talk about and bring to the world that is motivating. I mentioned this before in my first episode on how you turn on the television, there's just so much negativity going on all across the world. And I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make sure there's going to be something really positive and represent my brand of positivity. And it took me a couple of weeks putting the ideas together. And once I had that thought process, you know, on the flow, I was able to put those 10 topics together and titles of the episodes. And here we are again with God's blessings. Right now we on episode number 2, right? And I get excited because I know how valuable this is. I know every time when I used to do, or still do once in a while, do my interviews, I see the host reactions, or I see people's comments and how much important this is. Right? Having that avenue of having a positive hip hop artist, author, counselor, social worker, caseworker present, just really giving you a lot of good testimony of things that are really important. Right? And we're not trying to be biased and say what they're doing is not important. Everyone has their own vision of what they see in the world and what they want to represent. To each his own. But I just really wanted to make sure that this was going to be a podcast where that information got to be right. It's got to be evidence-based. It's got to be correct. It's got to be motivating. It's got to be impactful. And I've always believed that that's what separates one person from the other, right? Being impactful. And I've said this in a couple of interviews in the past about how much I value the impact. Whether how much impact I can provide you while we're doing this interview or this podcast or an interview in general, right? Or whether I'm working with the students or whether I'm writing music or whether I'm writing a book, right? Whichever way, I always believe that it's got to be so impactful whenever you're doing things like this. And the reason I say that is because I remember and another learning moment, right? Sometimes I'm going to share topics, even though the main topic today is the importance of creating goals. Something comes to my mind that I think is going to be impactful, a learning moment. I'm going to definitely share it. So this is one of those moments where I remember how impactful my counselors were when I was in high school. And that impact that they had in my life kind of helped me make good decisions. So from that big sample in my life, being a young man, I really understood that being impactful is what can really motivate a young man, where he's in a situation, in a moment where he's not feeling motivated. He's feeling like he don't know which direction we're going to take, or we're going to take the direction of the streets, or we're going to take the direction and the influence of our environment, or the impact that has been provided that's been so impactful is going to help you make that turn to the left instead of the right, and make better decisions, and really focus on what is it that you're trying to do here, where are we going with this, what are we trying to put together here, and what is it that we understanding from that energy or that disposition or presentation from them, right? So taking that moment, now that I really think about it, this is one of the reasons why I want to do this, and how much impact I can have nowadays, being in my age, all the experience I've had over 10 years working with the youth and social services, and 13 years been in the game doing music and books. I really wanted to continue to have that impact with this opportunity. So again, I just want to throw it in the air and just make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing on my side, right? And it's always good to stay up with what everything is going on. I'm looking at so many podcasts, and I'm like, hey, listen, congratulations. But on this side of town, we're going to do this way, right? And like I said, again, everybody has their way of doing things, but I just wanted to really emphasize and specialize in bringing those special delivery, or those special messages, I should say, to the youth. And obviously everyone that's interested in positive information, positive motivation, that's what we're here for, right? So very excited to be here now for the second episode, right? Importance of creating goals. So you might be wondering, but Sabor Latino, how did that even end up in that outline of you doing this podcast? Well, again, just seeing so many observations and things that I went through, and how many times we create goals and we don't get an opportunity to really make them happen, right? How many times you see people, New Year's resolution before the year is ending, and they start making goals to go to the gym. Let's use the gym, for example. Next thing you know, the year begins, and what are they doing? They're doing the gym for maybe 2-3 weeks or a month and a half. Again, we're not being biased. We're just having an open, positive conversation. And then a lot of people say, I'll go tomorrow. And the next thing you know, they still paying for that membership, and they went probably 5 times throughout that whole year. So where are we going with this? Well, creating goals. And when we're creating goals, the biggest and most important thing is, when you're creating this goal, that goal has to be meaningful. If that goal is meaningful, it doesn't matter what's going on in your life, whether it's raining, snowing, or whatever it may be, you're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that no weather and no conditions is going to stop you from accomplishing that goal. But the first thing is identifying how meaningful it is. And once you do that, everything takes its place. And what I mean by that is making sure that not only is it meaningful, how you're going to be able to measure your success, right? So let's use an example for the gym. If it's the gym, first things first, now you identify that it's very meaningful to you to go to the gym because either you took a course in fitness or because when you were younger, you played sports and whatever it was, you made that correlation and understood that these are one of the things that make you feel better is going to the gym. So, or you grew up in a household where everyone exercised, whether it was your parents always talking about the improvement of well-being or your health and nutrition and the value of eating healthy and et cetera, et cetera. So it kind of was installed in you at a young age. So now, looking at it in that point of view, it's meaningful to you. So no matter whatever's going on in your life, you know that you're going to make that happen and that goal happen, right? So again, the first thing I would say is it has to be meaningful. Then after you know that it's meaningful, how are we going to measure the success or the failure? Obviously, say, for example, you're going to the gym 3 times a week and your goal is to lose 15 pounds in, say, whatever time period you have. And say for whatever reason you didn't lose that weight. How will we be able to measure that? Right? You get on the scales, the same thing. So obviously, it's either that strategic plan is not working. We're going to have to revisit and rewrite it, review it, right? Probably create another plan, right? The point of what I'm trying to say is that everything has to have a meaning and that everything has to have a way of measuring it, the success. And once we put those two areas together, then it should be a little bit easier to accomplish your goals. Another thing I want to say is create goals that are realistic. A lot of the times we create goals and set ourselves up for failure. I'll give you a prime example. I wanted to create my own podcast show. Why would creating a podcast show be meaningful to Sabor Latino? Well, I've said this before. This is something meaningful because it's an extension of my life. Something that I want to continue to do besides books, counseling, casework, hip hop. Right? Okay, so it's meaningful. Absolutely, this is meaningful for Sabor Latino for me. Then I said to myself, is it realistic? I'm like, of course it's realistic. I've been in the game for 13 years doing hip hop. I've published 5 books. I've done public speaking. I was a caseworker working social services for almost 10 years. Of course, it's realistic and meaningful, right? And then how do we measure the success? Obviously from your observations. When you were doing treatment plans, when you were doing observations and doing home visits, when you were doing assessing people's work or reviewing people's your staff's work, right? So all those areas of samples or data was first collected before I even thought about doing this podcast. So is it realistic? Absolutely, it's realistic. Is there a lot of competition in podcast world? Of course there is. But I've always been the type that I don't follow no trends. And I'm saying this respectfully. Sabor Latino always had, thank God, from a young age of being a leader. I always felt like, and we're going to talk deeper into other things as we go on in this podcast, about how you could be a superstar in your own space. And that's episode number 8. And I don't want to talk too much about it now and give it away, but we're going to get into that when we get into episode number 8. So I've always had that mentality of being a leader. So putting all these things together and me coming up on, being under, whether it's a director, whether it's in the school system, whether when I was a paraprofessional, teacher's assistant, and under a teacher, or, all these observations, even going to school and learning from the professors, how do they move? Being under a supervisor or whatever it may be. how are they doing their things, right? And just really observing all those moments and learning from them. Learning moment. So once I felt like I had all those things together, I felt like now is the time to make it all happen, right? So yes, of course, it's realistic. It's meaningful, right? There's a way of measuring success and failure, experiences, observations. So although there's a lot of competition out there, through all my observations, going to school and everything else, I think this could be a success. And God willing, it will be a success, right? And like I said, everyone has their space and everyone does that, and blessings to everyone. But on this side, it's about positivity, how I want to be able to, again, provide some positive information to the world, especially telling my story. Even though there's 5 published books about me, over 500 pages about my life, 3 albums and 4 singles. Obviously, a lot of you guys know about my life, especially the Latino community. But in general, I wanted to be hands-on again and just really telling my story with a podcast. So correlating everything that I'm getting at with my story and the importance of creating goals, part of that also has to do that you believe in that it can be done. Part of that has to do with your self-esteem. Part of that has to do with believing in yourself. Because the reality is, when I first started getting into hip-hop, a lot of people were like, really? And a lot of them knew that I write music from a young age. I believe I started writing between 8 and 12 years old. I was writing poems and things like that. And that's how I started. And people were like, stay in school and this and that. I was like, of course. But I know I can do this. I love this. There was always something about Sabor Latino or Robert, even with ex-girlfriends, right? Learning moment again. We had little disagreements. What would I do? Write them a poem, write them a letter. And just me looking at their reactions, I was like, oh, okay. All right, so God gave me this talent. How am I going to be able to express to you, to be able to express myself? How can I use that? Or use something with that in the future? Or what can I do with that, right? So again, just those observations, even on that side of doing poetry, I started realizing that God blessed me with a talent to be able to express myself and be very creative. And I'm really thankful for that. So adding to what I'm saying, at a young age, I started realizing that not only I had the talent, but I had the confidence to do it. Right? So moving forward, all that kind of gave me a lot of confidence. And I was like, you know what? I could really do this. Again, with the experience and everything that I've been through, I should be able to put something together really, really, really nice. And one of the things I'll say also is that every time, even when you study my trajectory, everything I've set myself to do, I've worked hard and again, discipline, and we're going to talk about that. I was able to do it, with God's, obviously, inspiration as well, right? So again, creating goals, anything is possible. But again, at the same time, you have to be realistic about the goals that you're creating. Also manageable, checking out your time. What kind of goal are you creating? Do you have time to do that? A lot of people create goals where they don't have time. Let's use a student, for example. Let's just say, throwing it in the air, being also an educator, right? A student might create a goal where they want to play on the basketball team, but be part of it. Excellent goal. Is it meaningful? Absolutely. Maybe his father played basketball when he was young, or he played sports and fell in love with the basketball as soon as he put it through the hoop for the first time, right? Now, the point is talking about time management, but at the same time, this student has siblings that he needs to be home for to babysit because mom and dad switch shifts and they both sometimes work 2 shifts or 1 shift, etc., etc. So he needs to be home early. Now, him creating a goal that he wants to be part of a sports team in a school, high school, or whatever it may be, is that realistic? And if you really think about it, although he has the passion to do it, although he might have the talent to do it, but is it realistic? And obviously it's not, right? Time management. So again, when we're creating goals, it's important to look at all these areas, because the last thing, again, you don't want to create goals and set up yourself for failure, right? When you actually have the time to do it, right? So again, that's also another part that needs to be taken into consideration, because that's also a very important part, right? So now we found out the goal that we want. We found out is it realistic. We found out is it measurable. We find out that we have time to do it. Now you just got to put it in place and make it happen. And the only way you're going to continue to stay motivated, again, is because it has to be meaningful. And even though you're going to have your days, right? Because there are going to be days where you're not going to be feeling motivated. There's going to be days where it's raining. There's going to be days where you're tired. But if it's meaningful, you're going to figure out a way how to get it done. If you ask students that got high GPAs, high grades, and you ask them, how do you get high grades? And they're going to tell you, because school means a lot to me. And you might say, but why? You ask them, and they say, well, when I grew up in a household, all my parents both were professionals. All my parents loved school, and all they put into my brain was the importance of education. Similar to my dad when I was coming up, right? So what do you think they're thinking about? It don't matter what they're going to do. They know the importance, right? And how meaningful it is to get good grades and value their education. So when they're going to create goals, there's not going to be nothing that's going to stop them, because it's so meaningful to them, right? So just be mindful. Another thing I'll say is, not right away you have to create long-term goals. You can create short-term goals, and through short-term goals, you move on to long-term goals. Because also in that journey of creating goals and making it successful, right? As you start accomplishing those short-term goals, what you're going to do is you're going to start building your self-esteem. And once you start building your self-esteem, you're going to start realizing, like, you know what? I can do this. And then when you're receiving positive reinforcement from your professors, your teachers, your counselors, oh, that was a great job. Oh, wow, you were able to get 95 on that exam, on that quiz. Wow. Now you're sitting back and you're like, wait a minute. I can really do this. And you start putting it into practice. And one of the things I believe in, and I always say this even in my interviews when I do TV shows or whatever it is, I always say it's not about learning something. It's about learning something that means something to you, but how do you make it into a way of life? And I speak a little bit about that in my 5th book, You Are a Beautiful and Special Person, no matter what. So again, when we are creating goals, we want to make sure that the goals are meaningful. We want to make sure that they're measurable, right? And we want to make sure also there's time management to be able to do it. And then we go back into the concept of short-term goals. And then as your self-esteem continues to build, you know you can do this. Next thing you know, you completed that goal. And then another thing I forgot to mention, or not that I forget, I haven't mentioned, is that once you do complete that goal, short or long term, you'll continue to create goals. Because again, it's about making it a way of life. What's going to happen when you're transitioning, especially the youth, into adulthood? You're going to continue to create goals for the rest of your life. As you get older, you'll have more responsibilities. And when you have more responsibilities, you're going to do whatever it takes to create more goals. And you're like, oh, I could do this. Next thing you know, you got 3 or 4 goals at one time. And, you know, it's still manageable for you without no problem. So again, creating goals, being mindful, right? Having that motivation to do it, having that strategic plan in place to do it, right? Really thinking about, no matter what gets in my way, I'm going to accomplish this goal, right? And the last part, once you do accomplish this goal, continue to create your goals. Continue to work on your goals. Because again, it's just not, and we'll get deep into this, I always said it's not about the GPA of school is the GPA of life, right? So thinking about, you created that goal. Now look at other areas in your life where you might be interested in creating other goals, right? And you keep going from there. And as you're working on all those areas in your life, your GPA in life continues to go up, right? And we want to make it in life with a passing grade in your GPA. Don't let that go through your mind right now, because that's something deep that you really need to think about. It's not about the grade in school. It's about the high GPA in life. And in order for you to get that, you have to work on all those different areas. And all those areas start with, what is today's topic? Creating goals. We want to make goals for success, not for failure. So to wrap all this up, learning moment would be, when we are creating goals, we want to make sure that they're meaningful. Time management, very important, right? Short-term goals, long-term goals. And when we put all those areas together, you will have a better ability to be successful in completing those goals. It's not hard. And once you continue to do it, you'll get more confident. The more confident goes up, your self-esteem goes up. Then you start to say, you know what, I can do this. Especially, again, when you're getting a lot of positive reinforcement from your support system. And another thing, real quick, before I wrap it up, having good support is also part of successful goal accomplishment. Because again, your teachers are motivating you, your parents are motivating you, everyone that loves you is telling you, yes, you can do it. And sometimes we get into a situation where we might feel like maybe we feel a little bit doubtful. And that's normal. That's part of life. But then really understanding that you do have the talent to do it. And that's where I come in, or your parents come in, or someone that can motivate you to really see the talent that you have and how far you can go in life and not waste your talent. So I'm going to wrap all this up. To all the youth out there, I hope you learned something. To anyone in general that had a goal in mind that they really wanted to create, to get a house, to get a car, to get married, to have more finances, to have higher education, whatever it was, think about those concepts I threw in the air, put them into detail so you can really understand that anything in life is possible. But first thing, you got to have a strategic plan. It has to be meaningful. It has to be measurable, right? And you really, something that you really want. Short-term goals and then long-term goals. And then after that equals self-esteem. Self-esteem equals what? More support system, positive affirmations. And then from there, review and revising to see how you're doing with that. And trust me, you'll be able to accomplish that goal. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. Season 2. I'm sorry, not season 2. Episode 2 is now complete. And from the bottom of my heart, I hope you learned something. And the last time I'm going to say to all the youth, stay focused. Right now, after next week, next Wednesday, we already on April 1st. We're getting closer and closer to the finish line of this school year being over. Stay focused. If you need to speak to your teachers or your counselors, whatever you need to do, take care of it. Again, goals, because I know a lot of you made a lot of goals. Stay focused so at the ending of the year, you'll be feeling blessed, you'll be feeling better, you'll be feeling accomplished because you were able to complete those goals throughout this whole year. All right, guys, I'm going to catch y'all on the next one, episode number 3, which is, hold on, let me look at this. Episode number 3 is having discipline. And why having discipline is so important not only to accomplish your goals, but just to be successful in life. All right, guys, I hope you guys really enjoy this second episode, and I really look forward to seeing you guys again on the next one. And before I leave, I have to give you that positive message. Always remember that no matter what, you all are a beautiful and special person, no matter what. Good evening, everyone. Blessings. Thank you.
Ambientes que ya ha pasado con todos los barrios, ya no hay cariño para nuestros niños. La escuela es importante, que ya ha pasado con todos los ambientes, que ya ha pasado con todos los barrios, ya no hay cariño para nuestros niños. Esto es complicado, pero tengo que hacerlo. Primero en línea, es el sabor latino. Es increíble lo que sigue pasando y mis palabras las siguen ignorando. La escuela nos sigue fallando y las maestras siguen en silencio. Hipocresía, todo es ganancia, y en las guarderías siguen vendiendo drogas. Mundo frío, no existe conciencia, no dejes que te engañe la apariencia. Muchas corbatas y muchos trajes de vestir, mientras los niños tienen que sufrir. Hay dinero